Kia ora tatou. I am Stos, and today I'm going to do a quick introduction to colours in video games and setting up a palette in Inkscape or GIMP. One of the first decisions when making a video game is what colours you're going to use. With modern RGB screens, we have access to approximately 16.7 million different colours, so when making a game we need to limit our colour palette to establish a specific mood or feeling. There are lots of great examples of how colour can influence a player, but I'm going to briefly compare Fallout 3 and The Outer Worlds. Fallout 3 is set in a post-nuclear apocalypse, Washington DC. The overall feel of the game is dirty and eco-dystopian. In order to achieve this idea, the game uses extensively greys and browns. This is not a place you'd like to live, and as such has very limited use of bright colours or contrast. Compare this to The Outer Worlds. The game is bright and colourful, with a wide colour palette which makes it much more inviting. Even in the first area we can contrast the town of Edgewater with its greys and browns with the lush environment of the Emerald Vale. Use of colour pushes the player to explore the bright and welcoming world while juxtaposing the failing Space's Choice colony town. Though the mechanics of these two games are very similar, the use of colour gives very different aesthetics and evokes different moods in the players. In order to briefly understand what colours do and do not work together, I'm going to give a rundown of the colour wheel and how you can use it to create a colour palette for your game. To simplify the wide range of colours that a computer can present, it is useful to look at just 12 for comparison. Complementary colours are found on opposite sides of the colour wheel and give strong contrast. These are commonly used in sci-fi games to make vibrant colour combinations, like reds with greens, blues with oranges, and yellows with purples. Monochromatic colours all come from one segment of the colour wheel. These colour schemes use different shades to evoke strong emotions associated with that colour. These palettes tend to use colour psychology to evoke emotional responses in the player. The most famous example of this in gaming is Limbo, which uses extensively blacks and greys. This heightens the tension and evokes a dark and oppressive world. Analogous colours are side by side on the colour wheel. This gives slightly more contrast than a monochromatic colour palette, with the centre colour being dominant and the other two enriching it. Triadic colours are triple combinations evenly spaced around the colour wheel. This is a high contrast colour scheme. These combinations allow for a lot of versatility and are often used to display different pieces of information to the player. For example, in RPGs, the combination of red for health, blue for mana, and yellow for stamina feed back information to the player on their character's current condition. Tetradic colours are quads that are spaced evenly around the colour wheel. It is often called a double complementary colour scheme because it consists of two pairs of complementary colours. These colours are still bold but can be used to contrast each other. The best example of this is in brightly coloured games aimed at a more casual audience. The most obvious example is Super Mario, which extensively uses a combination of blue, yellow, red, and green. So now that we understand some of the theory behind colours in video games, I want to show you a really good resource for downloading some free colour palettes all of your own. I highly recommend this website. It's called LowSpec, and it's really good. It's got a whole bunch of pixel art tutorials, but if you scroll down just a little bit, this is the bit we're interested in, and that is the palette list. I'm going to go and browse the palettes. There's lots of filtering options, so that's really good, and you can start to search for ones that you like the look of, and you can see that already some of those ideas behind the color theory are starting to come through. This is a monochromatic color palette, and we've got some contrasting colors of reds and blues, but the one I'm interested in using is actually a monochromatic color palette. It's called Mushroom. And it is by Jimson 3, and you can see there's lots of reds and browns and oranges, and I reckon this will be really good. So when I open that up, I can see lots of information on it. For instance, these are all the hex codes of those colors, but if we scroll down just a little bit more, we can download this GPL file. So we're going to download that, and this is going to work both in Inkscape and in GIMP. Just very briefly looking at that file, we can see that these are the 256 color numbers, so red, green, blue, and there's also the hex values, but this will not be used in Inkscape. I'm also just going to quickly remove that hashtag there. Then that's for Inkscape to pull this file in correctly. So I'm going to quickly close that down and save it. Now if you open up GIMP, up in the top right hand corner there is actually a palette button. So you can see it says Pallets. And if we right click here and make a new import a palette, we can import the palette file. And if we go to our downloads, OSS downloads, we'll see that that .gpl file is right there. And we open that up and we can see the preview, and that looks all good. So we're going to name that mushroom. And we're going to import it. Now, where did it go? It should be in here. Warm colors. Mushroom. Where did it go? Ah, there it is. There it is. It's right there. So at the moment it's really, really small, but the other thing you can do is double click on it, double click on it, and it has all of these colors available to you now to use. In Inkscape it's a little bit more tricky, so if I open up Inkscape, in order to find all the palettes, they're actually hidden in here. So they're actually hidden down here, and you can swap between the palettes here, and you can see them popping up at the bottom of the screen. But if we want to import our own palette, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Edit, Preferences, and then inside here we have Tools, Behavior, Import, System, User Palettes, and we can open that up. Now what we need to do is we need to paste the file into here. So I just quickly open Downloads in a new tab, and I'm going to copy this and paste it into here. Now in order for this to take effect, we actually have to close down Inkscape and open it up again. And now if we check in here, we should have mushroom.jpl sitting right here, ready for us to use. That's us done and dusted for a quick introduction to the color palettes in Inkscape and GIMP. Have an awesome day,